Okay, yeah, now it is recording. So as you know, as you can see, today we have to continue talking about the speaking, teaching speaking. And first we're going to make a fast review, fast feedback, all right, of what we talked about the last week, all right? So let's start. Remember that the last class we were talking about communication strategies, no? And we analyzed different strategies that we could use in order to get some purposes of communication. No? Remember, when we speak, the most important is to develop or to complete some purposes of communication, no? Such as greeting, thanking, asking, and so on. No? So, but sometimes we have some problems, no? We have some problems, we have some difficulties to communicate what we want to say, no? The message that we want to transmit, no? So we are going to use some strategies to give our message. Can you remember some of them? What strategies do we use and our students could use too when they speak in the second or foreign language? What strategies? Can you remember? No. Nobody? Can you remember what were the strategies that we use, a student use to communicate?
Good evening, teacher. For example, one activity can be a conversation with two partners to practice.
Yeah, this is the activity, no? But what happened in this conversation, maybe you work in pairs or in groups, but some of the students don't have fluency, so they stop and they don't know what to say. So what strategies could they use to continue communicating or to continue talking in this conversation? What strategies? What things could they do to talk, to speak? No. Nobody? Okay, yeah, don't worry. This is the purpose of this first part, to make a review, no? So to remember, no? Because 1 week, sometimes with all the things that we do and we have to do and all the topics that maybe you could see, so maybe you can forget, no? So let's see. Let's make a review here. One of these is avoidance or reduction strategies. For example, message abandonment, topic avoidance. So students, when they don't know what to say, maybe they change, no, or they avoid talking about that topic. All right, and they could start talking about other things. Notice this is a strategy, no, strategy to continue talking. Well, I don't know about the topic. Yeah, I'm gonna change it. Oh, by the way, have you seen the soccer? Notice they change the topics because they avoid talking about something that they don't know, maybe, no? Or the message abandonment, so they leave, not the message. All right. So this is one. Another strategy is stalling or time gaining strategies. Here they use fillers or hesitation devices. Oh, I mean, well, notice. So they use this, fillers or hesitation devices. No? Maybe they don't know exactly what to say. They say, well, let me think. Yeah, that's and continue talking. Notice they gain time. That's why here says time gaining. So they are gaining time because they are thinking, no, they are thinking what to say. They are not sure, or maybe they don't know. So they try to think and try to remember something. So they gain time, no? Oh, yeah, yes. Well, according to my point of view, notice they are thinking what to say. No, this is a strategy, all right? This is a strategy. Another one, achievement or compensatory strategies. So here you have circumlocation, approximation, and use of all-purpose words. Can you remember what circumlocation is? Can you remember something about this? Circumlocation? No, nobody? Circumlocation? For example, let's imagine this situation. Oh, yes, I want to open the door, but I couldn't find... Oh, yeah, sorry, I couldn't find... Well, the thing that we use to open the door, I'm using circumlocation. What is it? Circumlocation. Notice, the person didn't know exactly the word, but what did he do? Or what did I do? Janela?
Good evening, teacher. No, it was...
Oh, you were testing your microphone. All right. Okay, Janela, don't worry. Yeah, so notice, I'm going to repeat my example again. Imagine that I start talking, so I'm talking to my friend and said, oh yes, yesterday I got late to my house and I couldn't find my... I forgot. I couldn't find my... Well, the things that I used to open the door. What did I do? I forgot how to say a word, right? And instead of saying the word, what did I do? Oh, something that we
You use a long information.
Yeah, all right.
Unnecessary, but you use to communicate this long information.
Yeah, so I couldn't remember the word, no, because the word was keys, because I said, oh, I got late to my house, but I couldn't find my keys. But I forgot, maybe, or I didn't know. Oh, the word, what was the word? Yeah, the object, the thing that we use to open doors when it's locked. So I replace this word giving a description, right? Giving a description of that thing or that object. So we call this circumlocation, all right? And sometimes we could call this a paraphrase, no? When you say something with your own words. You know, not exactly, well, you say with your own words. No, this is circumlocation. Remember, approximation is to use a similar word, no? In use of all-purpose words that we use one word continuously, no? Oh, the thing that we use, oh, the thing that we read, oh, the thing. So you repeat the thing to refer to objects, no? So this is use of all-purpose words. Another one is the word canage, use of non-linguistic means, and literal translation and foreignizing. Notice here these strategies, achievement or compensatory strategies, word canage. No, this is similar words that we use it in two languages. Non-linguistic means your gestures, your movements. No, this is non-linguistic means. Translation. No, you use just a translation. Oh, Lucy, your microphone, please. Okay, thank you. And foreignizing, you use some words, no, from other language to your own language. No? And finally, we saw the other ones, code switching and appeal for help. Code switching, when you change language, no? Spanish, English, Spanish, so you change the language. And the last one is that you appeal for help, no? Maybe you ask your friend, or maybe you ask your teacher, no? For help, to help you, how to say something. Notice, remember these strategies. We have some strategies to avoid or to reduce, to avoid a topic, to reduce a topic. Some strategies you use to stall or gain time when you're not sure what to say. Other strategies you use to get to the goal, to communication. no, or compensatory strategies. You have these strategies. Remember, it's very important that our students could develop too in order to get some fluency. But as I told you the last week, no, here our role as a teacher is to control, no, not to overuse it. No, because I say, oh yeah, I'm going to translate a lot. No, it's not good. No, it's not good to translate a lot. All right, but at the beginning they can translate in order to remember to gain fluency, not to stop talking, because some student says, oh teacher, I don't know, no, I don't know how to say that, and they don't want to talk. So you could use, you could teach them, no, to use these strategies, not to stop talking, right? But remember, you need to control, that they cannot overuse it. And it also stops fluency, all right? If they overuse them, so it stops fluency. So at the beginning, they could use that, not to lose the motivation to talk, no? So they can talk and talk, all right? Okay, so notice these strategies. Remember these strategies. Yeah. Here. Then we saw this image, no, about Tarzan. He was thinking too many times how to introduce himself to Jane, but at the moment that he wanted to speak, he couldn't. Right? He couldn't. So we made a relationship, no? So Tarzan has the knowledge. He knew how to say, he knew how to introduce to Jane in different ways, notice, in different ways. So he had the knowledge. But what he didn't have, the availability. So to use it, to use this knowledge, to put it into practice. No? So he has the knowledge, but he wasn't able to put it into practice. That's why here we talked about two things, no? Two things when we want to speak. The first one is related to the knowledge. What knowledge is required for speaking, and how can this knowledge be made available for use? Notice, for use. This is very important to remember. To have knowledge, and you need to know what type of knowledge, and if it is available when you want to use them. So, then we talked about the knowledge is related to the linguistic information, and availability, it means that you are ready to use this linguistic information. All right? So Tarzan shows a linguistic competence, but Tarzan didn't show a communicative competence, because Tarzan had the linguistic information clearly, because he was thinking in three different ways how to introduce himself to Jane, and he did it properly, no? With good structure, good patterns, different expressions. So it means that he has the knowledge. But what happened to Tarzan? That he wasn't ready to use it. Alright? He wasn't ready to use it. Here we have a lot of factors, no? A lot of factors. Sometimes most of these factors are psychological or emotional, no? But there are other factors that are related to the acquisition of a language, no? To the learning of a language. That's what we are going to talk about today. So, according to the knowledge, remember. Oh, Lucy? Oh no. Okay. I think that you want to talk. Yeah, remember, you want to talk, you can tell me, teacher, yeah? You can comment, participate. Don't forget about it. So remember, when we talked about knowledge, we need to have a cool grammar, no? But grammar related to writing, no grammar related to speaking. Alright? Because the grammar of speaking is so varied. All right. So arrive, we can make some changes to the grammar of writing. But nowadays, the grammar of writing is changing too because of technology, the chatting. So the writing is becoming more and more informally, like speaking. And we are meeting a lot of things when we send messages, right? But as a general rule, so when we want to speak in another language, we need to have a core grammar. We need to have this knowledge. No? Then we need to know the linkers, different linkers and discourse markers to connect our ideas, our sentences, and related to speaking, our utterances. No? Utterances. Then we need to have a core vocabulary. Here notice the quantity, 1000 to 1500 high frequency items. Yeah? So words that we usually use when we talk in different contexts. That's why here says, if you know this, so it will cover 90% or your day-to-day needs. All right? Then we need to have a core phrase book of chunks. Now remember, chunks are set of words that we usually use in different situations, in different contents, according to different patterns or structures too. So here we have time and place adverbials or vagueness expressions and so on. Then going back to the topic that we saw at the beginning, strategies. We need also some strategies in order to continue talking, as we have seen it before. Now, it's one of those things that, notice, what do you call it? Maybe you don't know the word, and, well, I don't know. No, I'm not going to talk. No. So you can continue talking using these kind of formulas, Oh, yeah, yes. I can't remember exactly, but it's one of those things that we use to open doors. And you find, oh, yeah, that's those refer to keys. Yeah, I got it, the key. And you continue talking, and you don't stop talking. Right? Notice, this is very important to know some strategies of communication. This is related to the strategies, to use all-purpose quoting expressions. He said, and then I said, in order to report something. Formula ways of performing common speech acts. Remember, speech acts are the purposes of communication. Greeting, thanking, promising, warning, offering, requesting, inviting, introducing yourself, ordering food. Notice, all of these are purposes of communication. Remember, when we talk, when we speak, we talk or speak because of a purpose. Not because, oh yeah, I want to speak because I want. No, we have a purpose. For example, I'm talking to you. What is my purpose? To give you some information, right, related to this skill. So I'm talking because I have this purpose, and you can get some information. Remember, then we have the transactional and interpersonal. So transactional and interpersonal, it refers to the purpose. If we transmit information, we give information, or just to maintain a relationship. So here the purpose is to transmit, to give you some information, and you can get a better knowledge about how to teach this skill. So notice, here you have to manage some expressions or formula ways of performing different purposes of communication or speech acts or functions. Remember, in the books, when you work with books, so we have this, at the beginning of these English books, so we have the grammar, we have the vocabulary, we have the skills, and then we have functions. because these are the purposes of communication. No? Now, let's continue. Another thing that we need to know is the standard back channel devices. So how to respond, all right? How to react to the other person's talking. Oh, really? Oh, you're kidding. Okay, notice your reaction. The things we say when we are listening to another speaker. Because when we communicate, we need to interact. No? We need to interact. That's what I told you, no? Try to participate, try to communicate your ideas, no? Your opinions. Notice, interaction. And in a conversation, you interact more, right? So you need to use some standard devices, back channel devices to respond, to react. And it means that you show interest, no? You are showing interest on what the other person is talking, all right? If you don't show interest, so the other person says, no, he or she doesn't want to talk to me. Okay, bye-bye, see you. And the person goes out, no? So leaves you. So we need interaction, all right? We need interaction. So we need to know how to respond. And the other is related to the pronunciation, no? The use of intonation specifically, no? This is related to the flow of speech. All right, so notice all the things that we need to know. This is one aspect before speaking. So we need to have some knowledge, linguistic information. But then, notice, then this linguistic information has to be available to use. That's why we call this availability. What is the availability? Essentially, to ensure availability for use, there are three processes involved. Notice, to use this information that we have in our mind, in our brain, so we need to have three processes to ensure availability. So it means to make sure that you can use this information when you want to talk. All right? So what are these three processes? Notice. One of the processes is that learners or students need to become aware. Notice, they need to become aware of features of the target knowledge base. Aware, remember the word aware, similar to say conscious. You need to be conscious of the features or characteristics. No, remember features is similar to say characteristics of the target knowledge base. How do we call this? Awareness. Notice this is the first process. Awareness. All right? So learners need to become aware of these characteristics of the language that they are going to use. All right? Related to the knowledge they have. The second one is this. Now that they are conscious about these features, these characteristics, so they need to integrate these features into their existing knowledge base. So they need to insert, notice, they need to integrate these characteristics, these features, into what they know, that they already know. And we call this appropriation. You're going to appropriate. All right? Appropriation. And the third one, the third step or the third process is they need to develop the capacity to mobilize these features under real-time conditions. And we call this autonomy. Notice these three processes to ensure availability. So you're ready to use. So we have here awareness. Students are conscious about the target language, the characteristic of this target language. After being aware of these characteristics, they need to integrate them to their own existing knowledge base. So we call this appropriation. No, remember the general term of appropriate is to make something to you, right? No, it's yours. No, this is mine. It's not yours. So you make something personal to you, right? So something similar we have to do with the language, the structure, the patterns that you're learning. After being recognized, identified, or you are aware of these characteristics, so now you need to appropriate them, to internalize them, right? And after this internalization, now you have to be able to mobilize, to use, to apply these features under real-time conditions. You call this autonomy. You need to be autonomous. Notice, with these three processes, we ensure availability. We are ensuring availability. Now, let's start talking with the first process, awareness. Awareness raising activities. So here we're going to analyze some activities that we could develop to our students to raise their awareness. But let's start talking about this term. What does awareness mean? I told you. What does awareness mean? Can you tell me? Can you remember? I told you a few minutes ago.
To be conscious.
Aha! Yes. Anybody else? That's good, Abraham. Any other idea? To be conscious, says Abraham. This is what I told you. Maybe you knew it before, no? Nobody else? Awareness.
To have the knowledge about something, or maybe to do something with consciousness.
Yeah, that's it. To have knowledge, this is something related to awareness. No? When you are conscious about something, it means that you are acquiring some knowledge. Yeah, that's it. So let's see here some definitions related to awareness to have this term clear. So let's start. Notice in general terms, this is in a general term, awareness is a state or ability to perceive, to feel, or to be conscious of what? Conscious of events, objects, or sensory patterns. So notice this definition of awareness is a state or ability, a human ability to perceive, to feel, to be conscious of events, objects, or sensory patterns. In a more broadly aspect, it is the state of quality of being aware of something, being conscious of something. This is the general term of awareness. It is also defined as a human's or an animal's perception and cognitive reaction to a condition or event. Alright? So notice the definition of awareness. Is an ability, a state, right? That allow us to perceive, to feel, to be conscious of situations or objects or some sensory patterns, no? Or conditions. We are going to react. Notice at the end says a cognitive reaction. Cognitive is related to knowledge, all right? To a condition or event. Now that we have analyzed the general term of awareness, now remember that we're talking about a language. So, what does language awareness mean? What is that? Language awareness.
So
Everyone?
it means how ready you are, how able you are to talk, to speak, to manage the language, no? In
Yeah.
this case, English.
Yeah, this is availability, no? The availability. But one of the aspects related to availability is to be aware about the language characteristics, patterns, structures. So here, language awareness means explicit knowledge about language, unconscious perception and sensitivity in language learning, language teaching, and language use. This is what Abraham said. The use of the language to talk. Alright? So, but it's related to the knowledge that we have about the language. And we are conscious about it. We perceive, we're sensitive in our language learning, in our language teaching, and when we use the language. Notice here. So this is also referred to good knowledge about language. A conscious understanding of how languages work. Notice, a conscious understanding of how languages work, how people learn them, and how they use them. This is the language awareness, remember? So the knowledge, the conscious understanding of the language. But it refers to how the language works, how people use the language or learn the language. This is called language awareness. Remember this, okay? So we have analyzed this because now we are going to pass to some activities that we are going to use to raise awareness in our students. So we are going to make our students to have a good knowledge of the language, to recognize, to identify, to understand how English works. They are going to be conscious about this language. And then how to use it in real conditions. Alright? In real conditions. So this is a term referring to awareness. And this is one process. This is the first process to ensure availability. Remember, because first we talked about the knowledge, all the things that we need to know, no? Now, in order to ensure availability, so one of the processes, the first process is awareness. Let's see. Awareness raising activities. Now let's pass to this term itself. Activities that we are going to use to raise awareness to our students. So what does it mean? When we teach English to our students and when we ask them to speak, they are going to have this situation. They are going to have some knowledge and they are not going to have some knowledge. So sometimes they know something, but sometimes they don't know something. So between this we have a gap, we have a space, and we need to fill this gap. Notice, we need to fill this gap between what they know and what they don't know. So we need to fill this gap. And this is the purpose of these activities. No? The awareness raising activities have this purpose. So here you have that it is focused on a student's knowledge gaps and how to help them uncover or realize it. Okay? Notice, this is the focus of these activities. These activities are useful to make our students' knowledge would be more complete, that they don't have a lot of gaps. And we are going to help them, using these activities, we are going to help them to uncover or realize this. Right? So this is the purpose of these activities, awareness raising activities, to fill this gap, this knowledge gap, with what they know and what they don't know. All right? And this is one of the difficulties, no? That they want to talk. Oh, teacher, I don't know what to say. They don't know. Maybe they know other things, but maybe you ask them, yeah, now you're going to order a food in a restaurant. Oh, teacher, yeah, I know how to read. I know how to maybe ask for something, but in order to order a meal or a food, well, I don't know. I don't know the structures. I don't know how to say it. So these activities are going to make your students to recognize this knowledge, this linguistic information, to use them. All right? So this is the purpose of these activities, no? Awareness raising activities. And let's just start talking with three processes. This process that is inside availability has at the same time three processes. The first process is attention. To make our students aware of something, so you need to call their attention. Then the second one is noticing. So they need to recognize, identify, point it out, something related to the language. And finally, understanding. Okay? Notice these three processes of awareness raising activities. Hold the attention, to notice, to identify, to pinpoint something, and finally to understand it. They identify it. Notice these three processes. And we are going to talk about each of them. Attention. What is attention? Students need to be on alert, interested, involved, and curious if they are going to notice features of the touch skill. Do you want them to notice something about the language? The most important thing is that they have to be interested in that. They are on alert. Oh, there's something new I didn't know. Oh, so they are on alert, they are interested, they are involved, and they are curious. If they have these feelings, so they are going to notice the language easily. All right? So the first is the attention.
Excuse me, teacher.
Oh, Laura.
How can I do?
Yeah.
I think it's really difficult to a student to do attention. I mean, in my case, attention is not easy.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good question. Then we're going to see examples. This first part is the theory. And then we are going to pause to see how we can do this. Remember that we are going to analyze activities that we are going to use in order to call attention of our students, to get their interest. No? This is very important. Then we're going to analyze it, and then we're going to analyze how we are going to do that. All right, Laura?
Teacher,
Yes.
Okay, Abraham.
Along our teaching to our students, we usually find lots of gaps, no?
Mm-hmm.
To fix these gaps, one of the strategies can be feedbacks.
Yeah.
Or brainstorms.
All right. Yes, you're right. That brainstorming, brainstorming. Then we're going to talk about them, the strategies. Remember, when we talked about these processes, it's similar to what we talked about on the other skills, no? The pre, the while, and the post, no? Try to make an assimilation. This is the step related to the pre, no? When you want to introduce something, some structure, some patterns, some vocabulary, new structure, new patterns. So you need to make your students be interested in that, no? So this is a similar situation, no? But we have other terms. Now we have other terms. We are analyzing how to make the language available to use, and we are analyzing 3 processes, no? Here, awareness, appropriation, and autonomy. And now we are analyzing awareness. Inside awareness, we have 3 processes again. One of these is the attention. And as you told us, Abraham, feedback. For example, at the beginning of this session, I made a short feedback, no? In order to remember some ideas and in order to be interested in what is next. No, oh yeah, yes, I remember the last class we talked about the knowledge that we need to have in order to speak. And the teacher told us that in the next section we are going to talk about how we are going to make this knowledge available to use. Oh yes, I remember. And now you are prepared, eh? Now you are prepared to enter to the topic. So this is one of the strategies. That's good, Abraham. Another one is brainstorming, and then we're going to analyze others too. Yeah? So here, just this is the beginning, the theoretical part of this topic. All right. So the attention, to be alerted. They need to be alerted, interested, curious. Another one is noticing. Noticing is more than just paying attention. Noticing is conscious registering of the occurrence of some event or entity. So when do we notice things in a language? Can you tell me? Or when do they notice things in a language? When they are going to have some conscious registering of something in the language. When? In what kind of situations? No ideas? Notice, again, first, we need to make our students to be alert, to be curious. Now, they are going to notice something in the language. But what and when are they going to notice things in a language? Let me give you here some of them. Some of them. I know you know it. Maybe you don't know with these terms, no? Because these terms is related to the analysis of teaching, no? But I know that you know this topic because we use them a lot when we teach. For example, students notice things if they have been previously pointed to something or if there is an absence of something. For example, when you present new vocabulary to your students, they are going to notice, oh yeah, yes, and then maybe in the other lessons, or maybe when they have other materials to study, or maybe when they read something or listen to something, Or when maybe when they hear someone talking, they go, oh yes, I remember this word because my teacher taught us the last week. Notice, they could notice this new vocabulary and they could recognize it. Ah, yeah, yes, I got it. Or the other one, when they see that they don't have this knowledge, something is missing. No, I know how to read, but I don't know how to order. I can introduce myself, but I don't know how to ask for a request, or I don't know how to request something. So they are noticing, they are noticing that they need to learn something more. All right? Notice these two aspects. When they have been presented to something and they could see it or hear it later, and they could recognize it. Yeah, I've seen it before. Yeah, this been this. Oh yeah, so the person is talking about it. Yeah, so they notice. Oh, the other one, when they don't know. Oh no, I don't know how to say that. Oh, I don't know how to say brazo in English. No, I don't know. I know how to say labios, dientes, but I know how to say codo. Ah, no. I need to learn that. And notice, they are noticing. They are noticing. There is another one. Students also notice the difference between their own performance and the performance of the expert, which is called noticing the gap. Notice, gap. They notice the difference. Oh no. Oh, my classmate or the teacher speak more fluently than me. No, or maybe he or she uses more vocabulary. No, I need to improve. Notice. We call this noticing the gap. So they notice the difference between the expert and himself or herself. No? So this is noticing. Remember, conscious, that's why here says, conscious registrance of the occurrence of some event or entity. So there are three. When they have been introduced to something, to some patterns, to some vocabulary, to some structures, and they could recognize it later. The other ones are when they realize that they need to learn more. They don't know something. And finally, they identify, recognize the difference between the performances, the own performance with the other people's performance. Maybe the teacher or the classmate, no? Or native speaker, no? So you are noticing, all right? You are noticing. So remember, attention, noticing. Now, let's pass to the last one. The last one is understanding. What is understanding? Understanding is the recognition of a general rule or principle or pattern. You recognize it, you identify it. You recognize a general rule or principle or pattern. So notice these three processes related to awareness. Remember, this is related to awareness. Attention, noticing, and understanding. So we have these three processes. All right? Now, let's see some examples. Here, I'm going to show you some example. Let's see. Call the attention. This is one of the advice. One piece of advice. For example, this is like an example. All right? For example, to call the attention, you present an anecdote that has a humorous or unusual outcome to create the interest. Notice, to create the interest. So you present to your students an anecdote, And this anecdote has a humorous or unusual outcome or result. No, the outcome is the result. Okay? So you call their attention, showing them something funny, humorous. So now they are interested. All right? They are motivated and they are curious. Oh, what will be that topic? No, what we are going to learn? So notice, this is just one example. Now, promote noticing. To promote noticing. Incorporate students into the story with several instances of a narrative device. And here you introduce new vocabulary. Okay? So you present the vocabulary that they are going to use, that they are going to use, and they are going to recognize it. They are going to recognize it. And finally, support understanding, asking students to underline, notice, to underline each instance of the pattern in a transcript of the anecdote. Okay? Notice, what is the purpose of this speaking activity? This is just at the beginning. Notice, this is just at the beginning. So in order to introduce this kind of a speech, no? Maybe the purpose of this activity is that they are going to tell a story. No? They are going to talk about a story. So the teacher, what does the teacher do? So he tells an anecdote to the students, and this anecdote is humorous, or the result, the outcome is humorous or unusual. So they catch, the teacher catches their attention using this strategy with something, with a funny activity, funny story. Then the teacher, notice, the teacher presents some structures. That's why he has several instances of a narrative device. Of a narrative device, because they are going to tell a story, an anecdote. And the teacher presents or introduces the new vocabulary. So the teacher is promoting this process of noticing. And finally, to support that the students could get this new vocabulary, these new structures or patterns, one of the activities, this is an example because we have more activities to do. So the teacher asks the students to underline in a transcript. Notice, the teacher used a transcript maybe of the anecdote, of the story that they listened before, and asked the students to underline each instant of the pattern in a transcript of the anecdote. Notice, here we have these processes in the awareness to make your students be conscious of some situations, some aspects of the language that they are going to use to talk. Remember, they are going to use this pattern, this structure, this vocabulary to talk. So they must be conscious about it. All right? So how can you do that? By calling their attention, presenting this in a funny way or humorous way or unusual way. So you call their attention. Then you promote their noticing they need to recognize this new vocabulary, new structures, new patterns. And finally, they identify. They identify by underlining, here's in this example, by underlining this every instant of the patterns in a transcript of the anecdote. For example, no? It makes me remember when I do a similar activity in my classes at school, no? For example, we started with a listening and reading activity. No? We have a test, a blog on an article, and then they have to find some words, no, to match the definition of some words which are involved or underlined. No, notice this. I'm introducing the vocabulary, and then, no, here's is one of the activities that the students need to recognize some structures used in the test. So they need to underline. Ah, yeah, teacher, yeah. Here we're using this structure that you taught before. This is the present perfect. Oh, yeah, this is the conditional. No, the first conditional. So notice, I'm making my students to be conscious about this structure. First, I call their attention, then I promote noticing, and finally, I support understanding. So notice the three processes, Notice the three processes that is involved in awareness. Awareness raising. You're going to raise awareness in your students. We're going to see more activities. This is just as an example. One of the activities that we could use to to make our students be aware is using recordings and transcripts. Notice, we're going to use recordings and transcripts. So you play recordings either of monologue or multi-party talk, which are typically pre-scripted and performed by actors. Alright? So here notice, we as teachers are going to play recordings, audios, monologue or multi-party talk, 2 people, 3 people, remember. So they are going to listen. Notice, they are going to listen, which are typically pre-script, so they have a script and performed by some actors. Could be real or unreal. Remember when we talked about here the pedagogic or authentic and no authentic material. So we could use here authentic or no authentic material. So the recordings are often designed to display a pre-selected grammar structure and are almost always simplified to ensure intelligibility. Notice here, the recordings are designed to display a pre-selected grammar structure. So remember, awareness is that they need to acquire this linguistic information, alright? Pre-selected grammar structure, but in a simplified way, alright? Not to be confused. If you present a lot of structures, or complex structures to your students, so it's going to be confusing for them, not intelligible for them. So this recording must have a pre-selected grammar structure and in a simplified way. All right? The teachers can incorporate repeated examples of particular features that they want the learners to notice. You can incorporate repeated examples of particular features that they want the learners to notice. Okay? The results from being both scripted and performed is the lack of authenticity. Here you have the script and then they are performed. So we have here that is not so authentic. It's not so authentic. Also, it makes the conversation sound a little artificial. There is more chance that the construction will be noticed here than in the authentic conversation. So here there is a debate if we need to use authentic material or not authentic material. But Here, one of the advantages of using no authentic material, the conversation sounds a little artificial, as you can see here, but it is possible that students could recognize or notice the grammar structure, the vocabulary more easily than in an authentic conversation, no? Because in an authentic conversation, maybe this conversation has a lot of structure, a lot of vocabulary, just a few vocabulary that you want to show, or maybe one example of the structure that you want to make your student notice, so it's not so adequate. No? But if you create, you insert your own conversation with several examples of the structure that you want your students to notice, so it's better, right? It's better. It's going to be easy for them to notice this. All right? Oh, what happened? What happened? Can you see what I'm sharing? Oh, can you listen to me? Can you listen to me?
No, it's
No.
black.
Oh, yes.
Black.
My audio was, yeah, my audio was connected too, yes? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, teacher.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you, but
You're not
your
showing
screen is
nothing.
black.
Yeah. No, I'm going to share it again. Maybe it's my connection. Then just give me a second. Give me a second. What's going on? No. Oh. Just give me a second, please. Yeah, I think this is it. Now, can you watch it?
It's coming up.
Yes. Awareness raising activities. Again, it's black again.
Oh, what's going on? Just give me a second, please. Now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, I think my laptop is crazy. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, is it okay? Yes?
The laptop is stressed.
Yeah, no,
Like
let
my
me tell you.
laptop.
Yes.
Like my laptop.
Yes. Let me tell you that this is not my laptop. I borrow my daughter's laptop because my laptop is in the technician. My laptop has died. So I
Yes.
asked my daughter, please, lend me your laptop because
This laptop is from my brother.
Oh yeah, we have,
Mine doesn't work.
yeah, me too.
Yes.
My laptop is not working. It's broken. I'm so worried because of I'm a laptop. I have a lot of information. I can risk something, but my technician says that in these days he's going to recover more. Well, I suppose so. I hope so. All right. Okay. So let's continue. How can the teacher put the recorded data to good practical use? Notice how we could use in a practical way. So let's see. We could use this to activate. This is what I told you. How can we get the interest of our students? Activating their background knowledge. We have seen this a lot, right? Activating their background knowledge. So depending on the difficulty of the content, it may help to establish the topic and or the context of the speech event. So you need to activate their background knowledge. How can you activate the background knowledge? One of the aspects that was mentioned by Abraham was the feedback, no? As I did here today. The other one is brainstorming, or as in the example, no? Telling to your students some unusual situations related to the topic or some funny activities that they could use to activate their interest, and also they are activating their background knowledge. Another one is check gist. So remember, what was the meaning of gist? Can you remember? Gist? No, nobody? No, no. Remember, we talked about this? Listening for gist. What is the meaning of this? Listening for gist. Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, yes, yes.
Listen for the principal, for the main idea.
Yes, that's it.
What is the main idea of video, of
Yes.
a story, of a paragraph?
Yes, that's right. So check gist means that you're gonna play an extract, notice, or an initial segment of it and ask general gist question. So you play for example, no, the first part of a conversation, and then you ask, oh, what do you think will happen next? Notice you are checking the gist and they are being, or you make your students be curious. No, oh, yeah, yes, oh, what will happen next? And they start thinking, no? They say, oh, teacher, yeah, the girl is going to refuse the invitation. Oh, no, no, the girl is going to accept the invitation and they are going to go out together for dinner. Or maybe the man is going to invite her to the cinema. And notice, they start thinking and they start, you activate, notice in your students, the interest. All right? The interest, this is very important. Right? Checking the gist. All right? For example, I had a similar situation in one of the activities that I did in my class. For example, in my class, I use a book, and at the end of each unit, we have a photo story. All right? This is a photo story. So first they listen to some part of this story, and then they have to guess what will happen next to the rest of the story. And then they give me the ideas, no? So you here use the brainstorming ideas, right? Or what would you do if you were the man? Or what would you do if you would be that character? Okay? Notice you start asking. Okay? You start asking. And then they see the video, because this is divided in two parts. No? First they listen and read some parts of the story, and the second part of the story is shown in a video. And they check, no? They check the information. Notice you're catching their attention. All right? And then I introduce some vocabulary to this. To notice, no? This is the other part. To notice this. And then they pass to create a similar conversation to the story. And they start speaking, talking. But notice the beginning is to make your students aware. Notice, aware. Another one, check register. Register, remember, register is related to if the conversation is formal, informal, the tenor, no? So it is often important to establish the register variables, particularly the tenor of the speech situation, no? If it is a formal, if it is informal, no? What expressions you could use in a formal situation or an informal situation. So it's very important to check that, no? Check the register. The other one is check details. Depending to what extent the teacher wants to achieve zero uncertainty. So after maybe they have listened to the story, to the anecdote. No, remember that this is the beginning. The beginning here, for example, in this pre-stage or pre-speaking, remember that this is related to the stages of a lesson, no? Pre, while, and post. The pre, this is referring to the pre. So they start activating the background knowledge. They start giving guesses, opinions, no? And you can check details too. They have listened to the story or some part of the story, so you can ask some more specific questions, no? This is the opposite of check gist. Check gist is general, no? The general here, the general. But then check details is some specific details, no? Some specific details. The other one is listen and read. This is the most common that we use. And now the transcript, replay the recording while learners read silently. Okay? Notice, they read this silently. You replay the recording, the audio, and the learners read this audio or this script silently. Okay? So you give the transcript. Notice, you're using the transcript and they can read it. No, they can read it. Resolve doubts. Learners should be given the opportunity to ask about problems they have about the test. So you can ask your students, it was difficult to understand? Was it easy to understand? What difficulties could you have? What things you couldn't understand? Or what vocabulary you couldn't understand? Or some ideas related to this. So they have the opportunity to ask about some difficulties that they have about the test. Another one, focusing on selected language feature. Remember, one of the aspects is when you give this conversation, this dialogue, this story, this anecdote, anything that they are going to read or listen, so it needs to have some selected language features. So one of these is focus on organization. To sensitize learners to the features of the spoken genres that may be unfamiliar to them, such as giving business presentations, use the transcript to identify the macro structure of the genre. So it depends, no? It depends on the genre that you give to them, no? So if it is, as he says, as a business presentation, or just an oral presentation that they need to talk about their family, or maybe they are going to tell a story, no? What are the components, the elements, no? That they could tell the story, for example, or what are the components or elements when they are going to give a presentation talking about their family, or maybe they are going to describe, no? An oral presentation to describe their famous band or singer, or famous soccer player or sport person. So they need to recognize what would it be organized. Notice how they would organize this speech. This is very important. First, you need to start talking about why do you like this person, for example, no? Or if they are going to describe their family, oh yeah, first you need to talk about you, then you start talking about your parents, then about your brothers or sisters or uncles or aunts, and you could finish talking about your grandparents. So you give them a structure, an organization. Notice, it depends, no? It depends according to the genre, no? The spoken genres. In a conversation, for example, no? You want to order a meal. So what do you need to do first? Yeah, first you have to greet, no? This is like a flow chart. I don't know if you have used before a flow chart, no? You have expressions said by the waiter or waitress, and expressions said by the client. And the waiter starts, no, how can I help you? And then you ask, or you answer to this, oh, yes, we need a table for two. Yeah, then, okay, follow me. Notice, there is an organization of this conversation. It doesn't mean that they are going to speak as they want. So you need to give them something structured, no? Something organized. And they, yeah, first I need to greet, then I'm going to ask for a table, then I'm going to start asking for some meal or drink, then a dessert, notice. Then I'm going to ask for the bill. Finally, I'm going to say goodbye and thanks. There is a structure. There is an organization because of this dialogue. No, we're talking about this dialogue. Notice if it is an oral presentation, if it is a conversation, so it has an organization, and it's very important to focus that on our students. All right? The other one is focus on sociocultural rules. Prepare two versions of a cross-cultural encounter, one of which is successful and one of which is not successful. Two versions of a cross-cultural encounter, with a successful situation and the other one with a non-successful situation. For example, I use this kind of activity, no? First, a conversation when a person accepts an invitation, for example, and then a second conversation with a person refusing an invitation. Two situations, two versions, all right? Another one is a focus on topic shift. Shift, remember the word shift is referring to the change. You change. So make a recording where the topic of conversation changes at least 3 times. You change the topic. Here you have, this is related, for example, when I teach some connectors, no? Some linkers, some discourse markers. So you can change the topic and going back to the topic, and then you change the topic again, and so on, no? So notice, you can prepare, no? You can prepare a recording where the topic of conversation changes at least 3 times. No, this is just an idea, no? 2, twice, or 3 times, no? As you want. So you change the topic. Notice, you change the topic. Focus on performance effects. Ask learners to use a transcript to identify, notice, to identify features of unscripted talk that result from its real-time construction. They need to identify features of unscripted talk that result from its real-time construction. So they need to identify characteristics, all right? Characteristics that maybe are not in the transcript. That's why here it says unscripted talk. But it's a result from its real-time construction. So that's why here's the performance effects. So they need to identify possible variables, no? Possible differences in the response, in the performance. So you could help them, to identify that, no? Because some students, oh no, teacher, but no, I don't know how to manage in a different situation. So you can give them some ideas, no? In order to identify these characteristics, all right? Another one, focus on communication strategies. This is what we talked before. Script or improvise some conversations where speakers use a variety of communication strategies to achieve their goal. This is what we talked before. So you can give your students some some conversations or dialogues or anecdotes or stories when in this test, in this oral test, so they could recognize, they could notice different strategies to communicate and achieve their goal. For example, you can present your students a conversation when a person doesn't know what to say. For example, a very common discourse marker when we are unsure about something is using this hesitation sound. Or, for example, you have a conversation. What day is it today? Oh yeah, I think it's 10. But what happened if you're not sure? What do you say if you're not sure? Yeah. Oh, I think it's the 10th. Notice this is a strategy, gaining time, no? We call this a strategy, gaining time strategy, because he's not so sure. So the person needs to think what to say. So he says, I think it's the 10th. For example, in our language, we use this hesitation marker we use this hesitation marker. In English, we use the sound I think it's the 10th. So this is a communication strategy or other conversation that they use, for example, some circumlocation strategies, to describe something, For example, if you want to emphasize on the relative pronouns, you could use this. Oh yeah, it's the person who discovered, it's the person who discovered America, Well, historian says that, It's the person who discovered, notice you're circumlocating. Oh yeah, it's something which we use, Something which we use to open doors. In this conversation, the focus of your conversation is to practice the relative pronouns or relative clauses, but you're using at the same time a communication strategy that is called circumlocation. Oh yeah, it's the place where you save your money. Notice, this is circumlocating. You are defining, you don't say the word, you define it. You make a short description. And this is a communication strategy, and you are using a grammatical structure to do that. You are using the relative pronouns or relative clauses. Notice the kind of activities that you could do to students to speak. Notice they are going to speak, but they need to identify it first. So you give them some conversations with this structure and to use different communication strategies. Focus on speech acts. Script or improvise a conversation which involves a number of speech acts. For example, a compliment, a response to a compliment, an invitation. This is very common that we generally give our students conversations related to speech acts, The conversation related to ordering a meal in a restaurant or inviting someone to do something, or accepting and refusing invitations, or complaining, a conversation related to complaining. Remember, these kind of conversations are focused on the speech acts or functions or purposes of communication. Remember, functions, purposes of communication, or speech acts. So you give your students a script. Notice, remember that we are talking about the activity of using transcripts or scripts or recordings. So you give your students a script, a transcript, or you improvise a conversation which has different speech acts. No, this is very important. Nowadays, we work with this kind of method, no? With this, according to the communicative approach, we have to give our students, we want to make them learn the language through functions, purposes of communication, and this is very important. For example, no? Going back to the previous one that I told you in the communication strategies, and also referring to the structure, the relative pronouns or relative clauses. So what would be the function? What would be the speech act? Can you guess? Remember, the conversation that I present to my students is a conversation when one student is going to say, oh yeah, this thing this is the place where we save our money, or this is the place where we pray to God. And the other say, oh yes, I think it's church. So they start talking. What would be the function, the speech act? Can you tell me? What would be the purpose of communication in this conversation? Can you tell me? No ideas, no ideas? Remember, the conversation is related to one student says something related to a thing or to a place or to a person. Oh yeah, it's a person. It's a person who works in a bank. It's a person who works in a hospital. So what is the function? What is the speech act here? What is the purpose of communication? Can you tell me? No ideas, no ideas?
To be understood, this person cannot say that word specifically, but he used a strategy and started to describe this place or thing or person. And
Yeah, Vanessa, what you told at the end, describing. Describing or explaining. This is the purpose of communication. The person is going to describe, to explain. And in order to describe or explain, he is going to use first a communication strategy. What is the communication strategy? Circumlocation. And in order to circumlocate, the student is going to use a grammatical structure. He's going to use relative pronouns or relative clauses. Notice all the things. All is related to the functions. Remember, the speech acts. Why are they talking? Because they are going to describe someone. They are going to describe things. They are going to describe places. Or they are going to explain, no? This is a kind of explanation, no? Notice, this is the speech act, all right? This is the purpose of communication. Notice, let's continue with the other one. Focus on discourse markers. Script again or improvise a conversation that includes some common discourse markers such as well, so, oh, no? And different connectors that we use to join our ideas or join our sentences or utterances, no? So conversations which have these kind of discourses, discourse markers, no? Focus on features of a spoken grammar. Notice that the purpose of these activities is to make your students aware, notice, to make your students aware. So focus on features of a spoken grammar. So here you have ellipses, heads and tails, repetitions, full starts. So how do we call all of this? Over. Can you remember? Over.
Overlapping, overlap.
Yes, overlapping, no? Ellipses is when they take out, no? They omit, they make something shorter. Heads and tails, so they use some important words. And repetition, no? It is, notice, they repeat something, no? So this is the features of a spoken grammar, no? Remember, it's different when we talked about the written grammar and the spoken grammar. So when we speak, we have a different structure, no? It's not like we write. No? When we write more consciously. When we speak, it's more spontaneously. So the structures related to grammar are different. Okay? So you have to give your students conversations, no? That they could identify these ellipses, these head and tails, these repetitions to make it more natural. Well, because sometimes when they listen to some conversations in the books, they don't have these kind of situations, right? Because they are more focused on practicing some structures of vocabulary. Sometimes they could use some of these features of the spoken grammar. No, they're just a few. But try to give your students these kind of features of the spoken grammar. So the grammar what we use when we talked. And they could identify, no? Oh yeah, teacher, notice here the grammar that we have when we write is not equal to the grammar, to the structure that we have when we speak. So they could notice that. They could notice that. Alright? Notice the difference, no? Between these two kind of structures. The other one is focus on vocabulary. Use a transcript or naturally occurring talk to demonstrate a high proportion of high frequency vocabulary that is characteristic of a spoken language. Also, naturally occurring talk. Try to make your students or to use your students transcript with naturally occurring talk. And in this naturally occurring talk, so we have some high frequency vocabulary. That is very important when we speak, no? When we speak, we generally produce or use high frequency words. No? According to the knowledge, remember, 1000 to 1500. This is the number of words, the range of words that we mostly use when we speak. Alright? And it covers 90%, no? As we have seen before. 90% of the real needs, or the needs that we have in real life, no? So it's very important to present our students this kind of vocabulary. Words that we usually use when we speak. Another one, notice we talked about using recordings and transcript, yeah? And we have seen different activities focus on the communication strategy, focus on the discourse markers, and so on. No, we have seen a lot of but it's just for the using recordings and transcripts. Now, using live listening. What is that? Live listening. It means listen to the teacher or a guest speaker.
News.
Aha. Yeah. All right. Teacher can adjust her talk according to her perception of the learner's level of understanding, and the learner can interact to ask questions, clarify details, and solicit repeats. Notice, we need to adjust our talk to according to the level of our students, according to the level of understanding of our students, we need to adequate our thought so they can interact with us. Because if we use more complex words, we use a lot of phrasal verbs, and our speed is so fast, so they are not going to be able to understand us, and they are not going to interact with us. So it's very important to adjust. No? We need to adjust our thought according to the perception of the learner's level of the students, the understanding of the students. So they could interact, no? They can interact with us, asking questions, clarifying details, and also soliciting repeats, no? Asking for repetitions. To raise awareness of features of a spoken language, the technique that works well is to combine the advantages of live listening with recorded listening and make a recording while speaking live. So a mix, no? A mix. We can mix the live listening, so it means your speech or a native speaker's speech, with a recording listening, no? That we usually use with the books, no? With the books, with the material that we use, no? That is recorded and performed by some people, no? So we can mix, all right? We can mix this. Maybe in some situations you use a recording. Maybe in some situations you use your voice, your own voice, no? For example, to tell a story or to tell an anecdote. So it's not necessary to give them a recording. No? So if the purpose of communication is that they have, or they are going to tell a story, no, this is the purpose of communication, tell a story, so you could use your voice. It's not necessary to listen to a recording. No? So here you have this, no? We call this the live listening. Live listening. Another one, using noticing the gap activities. Can you remember what was noticing the gap? Can you remember noticing the gap? Remember, we talked about this when we referred to noticing. Noticing. Remember, attention, noticing, understanding. So noticing. We notice when we have been introduced to some new vocabulary or some new instructions, and we could recognize them later. This is one. The other one is when we notice that we don't have something, right? We need to learn something more. This is another one. And the other was related to the... Can you remember? Can you remember? No, 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 nobody, nobody. Noticing the gap.
Gap to speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. So
when students speak each other.
Yeah, exactly. When they compare, no, to an expert or maybe to another classmate who speaks better, no, oh yeah, he speaks better, so he speaks more fluently, he uses more vocabulary. So this is called noticing the gap. So activities aim at raising awareness of the difference between the learner's current competence and the target competence. So here we have this. Learners can get important messages about their current state of proficiency by attending to their own output and by making comparison between their output and that of others. Okay? They are going to compare their own performance with other people's performance. So this is the noticing the gap activities. All right? Noticing the gap activities. For example, one of the activities that you could do here is when they have to perform a conversation in front of the class. So the other students who are listening, oh, notice, he pronounced the word in that way. Oh, yeah. We're gonna do the same. Oh, no, notice, this idea is good. Yeah. So they are noticing, notice. He's comparing. Oh, we put this and he uses another one. Oh, yeah. Notice they are comparing their output and that of others. This is called the noticing gap activities. Noticing the gap activities. So they are going to compare, They are going to compare with other people's performance or competence, Learners will only notice certain features of the L2 when they have reached the developmental stage in which they are ready to notice them. So probably the most effective gap noticing is that which is initiated by the learners themselves. When they start comparing each other, what Janela said, Speaking, with his other classmates, all right? So this is one of the most important gap noticing activity, So here you have this example: perform, observe, notice. Some students perform, then they observe, and they reperform. So here we have this, and this is based in a task-based approach. I don't know if you have heard about this approach, the task-based approach. So it has this process. They perform something, then they observe themselves, and they reperform the situation. Let's see here. Perform, observe, and reperform. So perform. Students perform a speaking task with their current ability. So something that they know. Notice, something that they know. So they perform a conversation with the knowledge, the skills they have. Observe. Students observe skilled practitioners performing the task, and students note the features they would like to incorporate. And then the last, students perform the original task or similar one, attempting to incorporate the target features. Notice, first, they perform a speaking activity, a speaking task, with their own knowledge, with their own abilities or skills. Then they observe other people, maybe with more complex structures, and they notice, they start noticing the features they would like to incorporate. What I told you, they see other partners' conversation. Oh, they use this idea, this expression. Yeah, we can change it. Yeah, we could use this better. It's better. So they can rearrange, So they reperform. Then they reperform, producing the original one or a similar one, but incorporating, notice, incorporating the target features. So this is an example. This is an example of the perform, observe, and reperform. And this is based in this activity, noticing the gap activity. Noticing the gap activity. Remember what I told you. This is related to awareness. The most important focus or aspect in these activities is that the students are going to be conscious about the language, about some features of the language. Remember, we're just at the beginning. So they are going to be conscious. This is very important that when you want your students to talk, that your students must be conscious about what they are going to use to talk. If they are not conscious about what they are going to use to talk, that's why they don't talk later. Alright? Because they don't know what structures, what function, what genre, what organization. I don't know what to do. Notice. So the most important aspect is that your student must be conscious, aware, aware of some features of the language. It means grammatical structures, vocabulary, expressions, genres, and so on. Now remember that we talked today is awareness. Next session, we are going to talk about the next process, the next step. After awareness, what is the next? What is the next stage or the next process? After your students being aware of this grammatical structure, of this vocabulary, of these strategies or communication strategies, of these discourse markers, what is the next step? Can you remember?
About availability.
Yeah, remember that we are talking about availability. Availability is divided in three. Awareness, then remember, availability is divided in three. Tell me. Awareness is the first. What is next? What is second?
Noticing.
No, this is part of awareness. Remember, awareness is divided. Let me see.
Appropriation.
Excellent. That's it. Appropriation. Remember, availability is divided in three processes. Today we talked about the first process, awareness. So you must be conscious. Remember, all the activities that we have seen before is related that your students must be conscious about the language that they are going to use to talk. So they must be conscious the features of the language that they are going to use to talk. Then, what is the next? To appropriate these features of language, they are going to make their own. And finally, they could get autonomy. So today we talked about the first one, awareness. And remember, awareness is divided in three too. Awareness is divided in three: attention, noticing, and understanding. So here we have attention to make your students interested, involved, curious. So you can make something funny, you can make your students listen to a transcript, a conversation, and notice. You can ask some questions. You played an extract or initial part of a conversation, and you ask your students what is next, or what will do one character of the conversation, or the story, or the anecdote. So you could use different activities to catch the interest that your students are involved. Then you have here noticing. So they are going to be conscious about the vocabulary that they have been presented before, or they could compare. This is what we talked the last part. They could compare the performance with other people. and they could insert, they could notice, oh, now he used this structure, or they use this expression, or they pronounce in that way. So they are noticing, they are noticing. And finally, the understanding when they recognize, when they recognize, they identify this general rule or principle or pattern. So we talked about today notice, we talked about today awareness. All right, so next session we are going to talk about the other two, that is appropriation and autonomy. So how they are going to appropriate and how they can be autonomous. Then we talked about speaking, when we talked about speaking. Remember, don't get confused. Don't get confused. Availability is divided in 3 processes. Remember that we talked about availability because first we talked about knowledge. What do we need to do when we want to speak? To have knowledge, and this knowledge must be available to use it. You are ready to use it. So we talked about the knowledge. We have different aspects related to the knowledge. Then this knowledge must be available. And in order to be available, we have 3 processes too: awareness, appropriation, and autonomy. And when we talked about awareness, we have again 3 processes: attention, noticing, and understanding. So we have this. And we revise and we check some activities, that we could do. One of them is using recordings and transcript. And this recording and transcript, we could use it in different ways, to activate the background knowledge, to check gist, to check register, to check details, listen and read, resolve doubts. We can focus on selected language features such as organization, sociocultural rules, topic shift, performance effects, discourse markers, features of spoken grammar. So we have seen a lot. And also we talked about live listening, and finally noticing gap activities. And one of these is very common in the task-based approach. So we are going to perform something, then we're going to analyze it, observe, and then we're going to redo it or reperforming it again, as in the example that you have here. All right, so next class we're going to talk about the other 2 processes: appropriation and autonomy. Remember, appropriation and autonomy. Okay, well, thanks for your attention and participation. That's all for today. Well, I think I passed 1 minute. Okay, well, take care a lot. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you next week. Thank you very much, teacher.
That's okay. Bye-bye, teacher.
Bye-bye, teacher.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Take care a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you next class. Bye-bye.
See you soon, teacher.